what you saw in there is the absolute worst of humanity. He says, it's okay that they let me go. It's not okay that they stripped my personal dignity in that
Right.
process.
Yeah.
It is tattooed on my brain, that conversation.
Welcome to Double Helix, where everything is connected. Hey there, awesome viewers and listeners. I'm your host, Mark Merritt, and on this show, we're going to dive into the fascinating web of connections that shape our health and our lives, from our physical and psychological well being to our emotional and spiritual growth. We'll explore how these connections, whether they're with the people around us or in intricate networks within ourselves, all the way down to our DNA, and how that can transform our lives for the better. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and give us a thumbs up for episodes that resonate with you. Let's get connected. Thank you all for joining us again. We actually have with us today Joel Steadman. And Joel is somebody that is I've known for quite a long time. Been very, very successful in his career and what he does. And so that's kind of what some of it's career wise, some of it's, personal wise, but really want to just touch base and have a conversation with you, Joel, about our connections that we've had together over the years. Um, and then some of that comes down to, as we talk about on the channel, that our connections have a direct result in our physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual.
Yeah.
And so you are somebody that really hits on all those cylinders in our relationship over the years, but also with others. And so I kind of want to just kind of explore that a little bit and just kind of have a little bit of a conversation. So,
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for having me, Mark. I'm always happy to hang out with you.
especially if we're going to Strap Tank, it's always a
That's
good
right.
place to go.
That's exactly
If
right.
you're in Utah, in Lehigh or Springville, you got to go to Strap Tank
That's
for a
right.
good lunch.
For a good cream soda.
Yes, yes, they make good food there. And so Joel, I'm curious on your end, um, just to hear from you, your side of things about how we met.
Oh, wow. Years ago. I don't remember exactly. I want to say maybe 2005-ish. Am I a million miles off of that? Maybe a little later than that.
It's around that time period. Yeah, it was around 2006, but 2005, 2006, those are pretty close.
That's, yeah, for my memory, that's about as close as I'm going to get. But had the chance to just meet this dynamic gentleman, and we were looking for a person to run not only our one of our biggest P&Ls in our business, but our biggest and most valuable customer simultaneously. And so met you, Mark, and almost instantaneously knew that it was a fit. I'm a guy that believes deeply in culture and finding people who fit that culture and who live it, not just in their life, in their work life, but kind of that's who they want to be in every facet of their life. And so, um, believe we hired you as kind of a multi-branch, maybe district manager. I don't remember the exact title, but most importantly, to make sure that our biggest customer was happy day in and day out. And so our relationship, I think, was really good, and for a while, and then you had a little accident, and that kind of took our relationship to the next level. Gave me the chance to more intimately get to know your amazing wife, Victoria, and spend time with her in the process of your healing, and be close to you in the process of your healing. And I think I'll say it before you do. I ended up terminating you at some point along the road. I like my version
I
better
was
than
I
your
was
version.
debating.
I don't know if termination's fair. I feel like I want to say the economy went haywire in '08,
Yeah.
when the bottom fell out in the housing crisis, and we just had to do reductions to kind of not save the company, but really to remain profitable. And that was obviously an incredibly painful experience that I've actually had a couple times in my career with people that I love. And so, yeah, I think, but somehow, you've forgiven me for that, and we've remained friends. The thing about those situations is it's mainly up to the recipient how they're going to receive a situation like that. It doesn't have a whole lot to do with me because I have to do what the business need was, and then I just kind of pray that the person will still know my heart and not have animosity toward me. But um,
Well,
sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't.
let me interject there real quick, because yes, there's a lot of truth to that, I believe. However, and I was mad, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
who isn't?
we had just signed a really big deal with this big customer, an extension of a contract, which was a really big deal. And then shockingly, I got laid off, and that was the '08. I got laid off in '09.
Hmm,
And so we'd survived several rounds of layoffs, and then I finally, it was my turn, I guess. And so I was mad. I remember going home and oh my gosh, this is stupid. Um, and really, yes, you're right. It does depend on, you know, what I was going through. However, a lot had to do with you.
hmm,
And a lot had to do with you because it was about a week later that you called me. And I didn't even want to take your call
I'm
because I
sure.
was mad,
I wouldn't have wanted to take it either.
you know. But you called me, and then that is when you showed me what your heart was on. And that's when I had to pause and turn down the anger inside of me and go, wait a second, okay, there's something. Yeah, you and I were connected before, and we got along really well, and we thoroughly loved you for your after the accident, and and we can chat a little bit about that a little later. It really came down to that conversation was able to make me go, okay, there's a good heart inside this guy that, all right, I need to get past this. And for really, it was almost, I almost want to say instantaneous. I can't imagine it was instantaneous, but it was rather quick that I went, okay, we're good. I see that now. But I did love, and of course, I told you this a couple of years later when you had me come speak to the same company that I'd been laid off for,
Yeah,
and you had me come and speak to them about how to build an extraordinary team. And do you remember me coming to you beforehand saying, "Do you want me to tell everybody that you fired me 2 years ago,
I
and now you want me
remember
to
that
teach you
conversation. Yes,
what to do?"
I remember the irony, for sure. I'm keenly aware of the irony, and I also, I remember you being incredibly fast to be forgiving of the business decision too. I don't recall it being a labor to extend the friendship, to be honest with you. And so, to your credit, like everybody has to decide what they're going to do in that moment,
Right.
and I'm pretty trained in the stages of grief, and so I try to make sure and be kind and compassionate about those when I have to have those conversations. But my intention with anybody that works for me is not a business transaction relationship. My intention is to have a relationship for a very long time. In my brain, every person that kind of comes in contact with my life is just a path, and some paths are really short and some paths are really long. My hope is that while that path that we're on it together, that I leave a lasting impression for good with that person. That's one of kind of my philosophical beliefs in life and in relationships. I'm
Yeah, and
grateful ours still is trucking along after all of these years. I don't have a ton of those in my life, so I'm great.
yeah, it's one of those. I think that comes from. I think there's effort on both parts.
Yeah,
It's not a one-sided thing. And I know there's times that we both have times it's like, yeah, okay, life has gone down a path, and I'm busy, or I'm
yeah,
thinking, or whatever. But I'm very appreciative that we keep that connection.
yeah. Me too.
And so,
Me too. It's not easy to do, and it does take both people who want to keep the friendship alive.
yeah, yeah, it definitely does. Now, I'll mention, I look back, and we brought up the accident a little bit, and often that comes into many of the conversations that I have with people is, that because it was pretty life changing
Hmm.
from my end, as well as the ripple effect that happened
Yeah, for a
elsewhere.
lot of us.
Um, but I will tell you, the the moment that both Victoria and I realized that, and by the way, Victoria told me to specifically say, make sure you tell Joel Hop. So I just want to
We
make sure
always
to
have,
tell
we
you that.
always, every phone call we're ever in, we have that conversation.
Exactly, exactly. Um, but when right after the accident, I had first surgery on, kind of just stabilizing me. The second surgery, which was the longest one, which was about 14 hours long, as they were kind of rebuilding, putting Humpty Dumpty back together again on on
Hmm.
on one of my legs. When we realized, and I didn't know this at the time, I didn't find out till afterwards that you were going to be one of those individuals that had a lifelong impact on us. Was you went down to the hospital so that
Yeah.
Victoria wasn't by herself, and you were there just to kind of help, even though you were doing other, you might have been working or whatever, you were still there.
Even really, I mean, it's mourn with those that mourn the concept. And so it was cool. Victoria and I got to spend some good time together and get to know each other better. And hopefully I was I think one thing about my personality is I'm pretty calm. And so I can generally help people feel a little bit more calm than they might be feeling if they're feeling anxiety. But one thing I've learned is it's really not about anything but being there.
Yeah. And I know that when Victoria told me later, she would get that anxiety because the surgery, 14 hours is a
It's
long time.
crazy. Yeah.
And and so she would get pretty anxious and feeling stressed. And then that's when you would step up and go get an update, and you'd come back, and you were that calm, as you mentioned, that calm factor that really helped a lot there. That's when we knew that this was more than just Joel's my boss.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to say a cool time, but it wasn't a cool time. It was a heartbreaking, like such an anxious time, but I was grateful to be able to be there. And it really, in a lot of respects, it's selfish too, because I wanted to be close enough to know what was going on and to not feel as helpless as you do. You're just waiting for phone calls.
Yeah. So I mean that's the beginning of what we knew, and about how the relationship would be. And then obviously within, it was a year and a half later. Was it a year and a half later? No, it was a year later was when I was laid off,
Yeah.
because the accident was in '08 and I was laid off in '09. And but even then we had solidified things up enough. It wasn't hard for me to, okay, I hear Joel, I hear your side of it.
Still hard. I mean,
Yeah.
that's every one of us have an amount of uh confidence and pride in what we do, and the worst thing is when somebody says we don't need it here anymore. That's just the worst moment. There's no way to have that happen and not feel dejected and wronged and all the things that you should feel, quite frankly.
Yeah. And I think both of us, having worked in companies everywhere from managers to running the companies, um, you look back, and you and I had this conversation before, when I've had to lay somebody off or let somebody go. I mean, it's heart wrenching.
It
And
is.
Victoria can always tell when I've had to do that because I'm just not myself, because I
Yeah.
realize the impact that has beyond just the business. right,
Yeah, you have this balancing act, because you have the business reasoning, and hopefully, for the most part, we don't ever have to have those decisions without some amount of consent to the decision. But you still have this moment where you have to make sure and not strip the person of their dignity.
right,
That's the key, right? Is you can't, whatever you do, you can't say something that would strip them of their dignity in that moment, because that is an everlasting mistake. Um, so you just have to be very thoughtful and considerate of how you're going to do it, so that you don't make it be something that makes them feel not good about who they are. But keep it situational. This isn't working here. It's just not going to work here, but it doesn't have anything to do with who you are as a human.
right, right. And and I fortunately, I mean, this is going to sound really bad, and you're gonna roll your eyes and no, no, no. But there's been more than one time when I'm in that role, in that position where I have to make those decisions, where I literally have said to myself, how would Joel handle this situation? Because
Gee.
you are the master at handling these situations, and that's been a real good guide point for me, because I can think of two or three people right offhand that I've had to have those hard conversations with and separate the work side away from, that I still have a very good relationship with. And that's because I didn't forget exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
There's to not separate that. One of them I talk to at least every couple of weeks.
Yeah.
He'll call me, what's going on? I'll call him, whatever. And it's really kind of a cool thing. But
Yeah, just really quickly, in 1994, I was sitting in my boss's office, and he had another manager come in, and they started arguing about another employee and how he wasn't a hard worker. He was a gentleman, probably my age now, to be honest with you, kind of mid 50s, and they got kind of pounding their chests, and the one manager said, "Well, I'll just let him go today." And so a couple hours later, I was brand new to this business. I got called in to sit in for this gentleman's separation. And it was everything the opposite of what we just spoke about. It was terrible. It was demeaning. It was telling him what a terrible worker he was, and
oh,
that he
that's the
was letting
worst.
him go. And so he did. The gentleman was in tears, was explaining that he had a son on an LDS mission, that this would just be incredible hardship on his family. So I was walking him to his car. I was brand new in the business world. His name was John Harvickson. And he looked at me and he said, "You seem like a good person, Joel. What you saw in there is the absolute worst of humanity." He says, "It's okay that they let me go. It's not okay that they stripped my personal dignity in that
Right.
process.
Yeah.
It is tattooed on my brain, that conversation."
And that won't go away. That's going to be
No,
with that person.
forever.
Yeah.
But he taught me something that changed my life in that moment. I never had the chance to tell him that, but yeah.
Shout out. Now you know. Hopefully you hear it
Shout out
someday.
John
Yeah.
Harvickson. Yes, I probably somewhere in his retirement years, thinking that he wished he didn't remember that day.
Yeah, and I mean, we've all had those individuals that had that kind of an impact, you know, on how we're communicating. And when I first started in sales, when I did wildland fires for a lot of years, and then I started in sales, and unfortunately the person who was training me was not really good at training people, right? It's just kind
Yeah,
of go. I remember the day one literally getting thrown out of an office. And I thought, oh my gosh, what
that's
have
a
I got
good first
myself
day.
into? What have I got myself into? Like, right. And so and then I remember picking up the phone and calling both my dad and my mom, who were very successful in sales.
Mm,
And I remember telling them, just take your parent hat off. I'm going to have a mentor mentee conversation about
mm,
sales, because I'm
yeah,
like, everyone's like, Mark, you can go sell, you can do this. And I didn't, I was like, whatever. Um, And I remember to this day, I was talking to my dad on one particular conversation because I was telling him about getting thrown out of this office and how does he handle it when he goes to sales calls and when he's visiting with people. And his comment was that when he goes and meets with that individual, that at that moment he makes certain that they feel that they are the most important person to him in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
And in the process of that, that extends beyond just the sales side of client, customer,
Mhm.
whatever. It extends into the other areas of our lives.
Yeah. I
Um,
love that.
you had mentioned a book a while ago, and I can't remember, and you're going to remember it. You were talking about maybe it's not a book, an individual who, when she would come home, she would focus. Everything's at home, and
Yeah.
then when she was,
Thresholds is the way she used to say it. When she crossed a threshold, she was in that place that she had just crossed over the threshold. And that's where her brain was 100% at. Christy McMullen, who I worked with in Cedar City, Utah, many, many years ago.
that's an amazing concept, and that's one when you shared that with me years ago. I still haven't mastered that. I'm just
Yeah,
going to
me
be
either.
honest, right? But there's more than one case where I go, okay, I'm here. Put my and in our world today, it's very different than back then. Now you have your phone constantly. You're like,
And
we
it's
set
the
that aside.
office. It's the hallway down from the kitchen.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, she was a great example too.
That's awesome. It's awesome. So, um, I was actually did some searching on Joel Steadman,
Uh-oh.
right? Uh-oh.
That'd be a
LinkedIn.
very fast search.
It didn't take very long. I'm just going to be honest. No.
It shouldn't take very long.
I found somewhere that you had mentioned inverse paranoid.
Yeah, my
Tell
tag.
me, tell me about inverse. I had never heard of that. And I was like, okay, inverse paranoid. Tell me what inverse paranoid is.
So I don't remember when I first saw it, but an inverse paranoid is a person who believes that the world is conspiring to do good to them. And this is my concept for life, right? And because really what you think and you believe generally comes to fruition because you just have the goggles on to anticipate it. And you can call it karma, you can call it whatever it is, but my philosophy is that every day when I wake up, the world is conspiring for me to do well, to have success, to find joy. Um, I am one of those people. I cannot stand when a person says life is great, but who knows? I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like it doesn't work in my brain when people say that. I don't think there's a benevolent God who has a grouchy side, who has a side where, my gosh, this Joel is just, things are going so well for him. I've got to throw some curveball at him to really just make his life painful for a minute. And so it's kind of the way I just anticipate the world to be. I anticipate good things happening. I anticipate good things happening to the people around me. Um, and you have to have balance. You can't, if you anticipate it to a high level, then you end up finding yourself disappointed when it doesn't meet your expectation. And I
Yeah.
learned that in my younger years. I learned to be happy with whatever the result ended up being. But yeah, I would unequivocally consider myself an inverse paranoid.
I was going to say, I'd never, when I was looking at stuff, I'd never dove into your LinkedIn stuff
Yeah.
before. Right. But I dove in and I was like, what in the very interesting. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I have that written a few different places.
Um, what specific values do you prioritize in your interactions with others?
Um, Man, that's a great question. The first thing that comes to my mind is trust. I think it's really important to be a person that people can trust. And if they tell you something that's confidential or sensitive, that they have a high level of trust that you would never share that or use it, for any amount of personal gain or anything like that. So I think trust is just absolutely imperative in authentic relationships. And I do think authenticity is really important. I um try to be very authentic, and sometimes it's a little goofy or it's a little off-putting. Um, but generally speaking, I try to be very authentic with people. And then just I think if my wife Mindy, if you asked her, she'd probably say I'm a good listener. I really enjoy. I think it's maybe from a lifetime of sales. But I really enjoy listening to people's situations and their problems. And I have trained myself to not always be solution listening, but just to be listening. For a lot of my life, I tried to be solution listening, and then you just listen so much with less detail because you're ready to hurry and save their life or handle their problem. So
Is
I,
that's the listening to respond
yes,
instead of
exactly.
listening. Yeah.
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 But yeah, I think those are maybe a couple of the things. I enjoy listening to people and letting them feel like they can just get it all out. And uh, so yeah, I think those are a couple things that come to my mind.
And I think, I agree. I think it's really important to listen to take in, I don't I'm never perfect at that one. Um, but there are times that I know when I'm having time conversations with Victoria, and I'll be listening and just being quiet and listening to what she has to say. And then I love it. She'll go, "Okay, I'm done. Your turn." That's
Yeah,
I'm
you got the
ready.
green light.
I'm ready for you to give some input. Yeah, I'm done. Your turn. I'm like, all right. Okay.
I'm getting better at saying I have a daughter, and she and I, well, I'm very close with all my kids, but she'll be the one that comes to me and kind of pour her heart out. And I'm very good now at saying, are you wanting me to help you fix
Mhm.
this, or did you just need to just get it out? And she really respects that because she a lot of times doesn't want the dad mode, help me fix
Right.
it. She just kind of wants to say, this is the hard that I'm in right now. Um, and I just wanted to tell you that it's the hard I'm in. So people who like you and I, who in our business lives, we have to make so many decisions every day, every hour, that we're used to just quickly listening, disseminating the information, and then having a potential solution. And so it has to be a discipline. Listening has to be a very specific discipline, in my opinion, for business leaders, because we're very used to making quick, spontaneous decisions. And that's not generally very fair to the people in our personal life.
Right. Yeah. And they don't appreciate that.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah. They
Yeah.
don't
When
need it
I,
fixed.
yeah, there's often it's just tell me, let me just talk. Let me
Yeah.
get it off. Because often what I found in the personal life side of things is that if they have that chance to talk and while they're talking, their brain's still running. Right.
Yeah.
Um, and with that, sometimes they just come up with their own either self-soothing, they figured out what they need to do to feel better about it, or they all of a sudden the idea hits them that how they can solve whatever the struggle is.
Yeah.
And so,
And how much more powerful is that? Because now they made the decision.
mhm.
You know, were able to work it through in their own mind, and it will be more resolute if they can make the decision instead of have somebody make it for them.
Yeah, and I think that that same concept, ties into that professional world as well, as much as we can.
Yeah.
While they want us to make quick decisions and split second stuff, some of the best relationships that I've developed in the professional world came not because of that, it came because of, you know, listening.
Mhm.
And it's interesting. Years ago, I ran that construction company, and when I first got there, um, I was always amazed that there always seemed to be a line at my office door. Here's the problem. What do I do?
The problem line.
Yeah, right. And then they would leave. Here's the problem. What do you want me to do? Here's the problem. And I finally went, people. My thought was, you're all smart.
Yeah,
And so what I told them at that point was, if you have a problem, great. That 100% bring it to me, but you're going to bring two solutions. And I want you
exactly.
to think about it beforehand and then bring it and say, here's the two solutions I have. And then we'll talk about those solutions. And it turned the whole thing around, which was way cool.
Yeah.
Where
No,
then
I
people
agree.
were running stuff.
And then there's less people eventually in that line, right? Because you've taught them how to to work through their decisions.
Yeah. And they didn't, it did over time got to be less and less people standing at the door. And then when they did actually come, they were actually real issues that beyond just, you know, the basic stuff. Cause I think
Yeah.
initially what they were trying to figure out is, um, who's Mark? What level of, it's that honeymoon period. We
Hmm.
don't want to do anything wrong. So we always want to, and so it's just
Yeah.
teaching people how to make those decisions
Yeah.
in the framework that we set.
Yeah.
Right. It's like I used to tell our kids, it's like a football game. There's a field and you can run any direction you want in that field. You step out of bounds, there's a consequence.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
And so, but within that field, it's yours.
I like
Right. You
that.
want to run and score for the other team. All right, go score for the other team.
Yeah.
But that's what we used to tell the boys is like, okay, here's the field. This is the playground. What do you
No
want to
out of
do?
bounds. Yeah. I like that.
And so,
I like that a
and was
lot.
the same way with people that I've had a chance to work over the years. It's like,
Yeah.
here's the playground that we're in. Figure it out.
Yeah. I like that.
So one of my favorite things about us, Joel, over the years is books.
Yeah. Yeah. You're the reader though. I pale in comparison to how fast
Oh
you
no,
go
I
through
listen.
books.
Dude, I'm an audiobook guy. I'm going to be
Still
honest. It's not, I don't have the patience to sit down and read because I can't read as fast as I can up that
list.
speed on audio.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I used to be a really good book listener. I don't spend much time in my car anymore. And so exercising, I'll do that when I exercise in the morning sometimes, but I still am old fashioned. I still open a book most every night, sometimes for a couple minutes and sometimes for an hour. Today is Saturday. I'll for sure read for an hour today. And uh, but yeah, and I think most of my recommendations come from you, quite frankly.
I don't know. You've shared some with me that
There's some good books. There's some life changing books out there.
I really enjoyed Tattoos on the Heart.
Yeah, that was amazing, huh?
That was a
That was a
really
better
great book.
listen. I would have never read that. That was a really important listen book. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That was one. I was scrolling through my books as I was flying back into town yesterday and scrolling through, and I'm like, oh yeah, I need to listen to that one again.
It was so good. Yeah. That guy talking about authenticity.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, if those of you that are listening, if you've not heard of Tattoos on the Heart, go over and check that. It's a great book. It's about an inner city
Preacher.
Jesuit priest
Yeah.
who works with the rough kids and the rough individuals. He's actually started his a nonprofit down there,
Yeah.
and they've done a really, yeah, just amazing group.
So impressive. Yeah. So impressive. I have my whole most of our company right now is reading leadership and self-deception. And because that's just one of the cores for me. And so that's kind of fun. Most of them haven't read it. And so they've been good conversations.
That's a really powerful book.
Yeah. It was life changing for me. This self-betrayal, this self-betrayal concept. Uh, I'm so glad I read it in my kind of mid 20s, I want to say, for the first time, as Mindy and I were starting to have a family. Understanding self-betrayal just absolutely changes the way you parent, in my opinion.
Yeah, it does.
And it was, so it's still to this day, all those years later, it's still a very impactful book for me.
You're the one that started off the book stuff between us. I'm gonna have to be honest with you.
Am I?
You
What book
walked
was it?
you walked into the Orem office of where we were at, and you handed everybody a book. Patrick Lencioni
Oh yeah,
getting naked.
that's
And
right. That was our
you
getting naked
handed that
gear.
to me, and the first thought is, what are you handing me based off of the
I
title, right?
I have the worst memory in the world, and I actually remember that moment. I remember your office and everything because I, of course, embellished the whole thing. We're getting naked, everybody.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's true. I remember that. That was a fun year. That was a fun year because that was our kind of our theme for the year.
That was a crazy that time period in that office was crazy. I remember, I mean, you hired me to come in and kind of help fix things operationally that were
Yeah,
going on there. And I still remember to this day, um, we had to literally change the whole staff out because it was pretty rough.
yeah,
And I remember to this day being in that office, which was one of the busiest offices in the company at the time,
yeah.
by myself, thinking, what the crap did I just do? And then you came up and said, what do you need? I'm like, I need an office manager that does this, this, this. And right away, you knew who we needed to talk to.
Yeah,
And she came in and
we
man,
found a gem.
she was amazing.
Yeah,
Um, and I'll just say Rosie, she's still, yeah,
absolutely
she's just
amazing.
just amazing person. And then we hired the all new staff and just brought in just a killer team.
Yeah, you did. I remember that team pretty well. Rosie's one of those cool stories because I wasn't a humongous fan of Rosie at first. I thought she would do well. I didn't know she'd be if she'd stick to staffing. Man, she's one of the greatest success stories
Yeah.
of my career. Just and I had zero. You had a lot to do with it. I had nothing to do with it. I got to sit in the cheap seats and just watch her be magnificent.
She was amazing, you know,
Yeah, just so impressive.
and I to this day, I mean, I haven't talked to her in years.
Me either.
Um, but to this day, I still look back and just laugh as I think about, I came back from the accident. I'm in my wheelchair full time, and I would go past her, and she'd say, "Hey, can you get that off the floor since you're down there?"
I remember
Who
that.
says
Yeah.
stuff like that, right?
Yeah,
And so,
she was amazing.
yeah, when we took that office and we started battling with the number one office, in
In West
staffing,
Valley.
everybody
Yeah.
doesn't understand. Sometimes, one of the metrics is how many hours you bill every week. And we started battling it out with the West Valley office. And I remember the first week that we beat them, I was actually out at that top customer, and I'm wheeling around. It's Rosie, right? And she goes, "Mark, are you sitting down?"
I actually remember that. It's amazing because I feel like my memory is not great, and I remember that time so much better than I thought I would.
And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
That
Oh,
that manager, the
it's fun to
manager
be
over
busy.
West Valley, he and I just we got along so well, and it became just this battle. It was like Seinfeld with Newman,
Yep.
right? And he was my Newman, and I'd be like West Valley, right?
It's so true. I still am very close to Matt as well. I actually hired Matt in 1994.
Really?
Yeah, he's at the same company.
Yeah,
Crazy,
he's still there.
crazy
He's still
kid.
there.
Yeah,
And he and I visit no, maybe once a year or so just to kind of say, "Hey, what's up?" Right?
yeah. We're
So
very close still.
he's one of those awesome people.
He is. Yeah,
So you've had the ability over the years, wherever you're at, you've had the ability to just draw in really, really amazing people.
yeah. It's it is. I look. I've had a ridiculous life and career, just full of joy. And my only genius is to be smart enough to hire people significantly smarter than me, more talented, more dynamic. And then for the most part, get out of their way. And I know that's such a cliche and everybody says it, but it really is true. If you look back across my life, I'm a pretty simple kid. I wasn't a 4.0 student in school. I'm never the smartest guy in the room, but I will love generally much deeper than most people. Thank heaven I'm built that way by good parents. And yeah, that's been that's the key to my success, still is today. Just hire amazing people, make sure they know that you care for their success, deeply care for their success, and then try to stay out of their way. Try not to put barriers in their way. Try to fight the fight with the businesses that you're in to not put barriers in their way and reduce red tape for them. But yeah, there's nothing special by any stretch of the imagination about Joel Steadman other than uh, I just care deeply about people. I want the best for them in their life. I want the best for them in every facet of their life. And that's the only legacy you can really have, to be honest with you. No one's going to think about how wealthy you made them at any given time in their life. They're going to just be thoughtful about if it was painful or not painful to work for that person or with that person. And if they made you want to be at all your kids' baseball or soccer games or dance recitals, those kind of things. But yeah, look, I still have a few more years in the intense day-to-day business world, but it is a joy to know you're making a difference for people. It is a joy for me anyway.
Yeah, I think those of us that have known you over the years, since that, you, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's one of those things, and I look at um, the relationship that we've had over.
Long time now.
It's almost coming up on 20 years.
Yeah.
I look at that relationship that we have, and I really do feel like it hits on all of those things: the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. We've had conversations around all of
Yeah. Many times.
you know and in reality, to me, some of the best conversations we've had have to do around the spiritual side of life,
Yeah. Me
because we're
too.
both we're both pretty faith-based individuals,
Yeah.
and those have been some really deep and touching conversations that I've had with you, be able to share some of that spiritual side of life that we.
Yeah. I feel the same. And I think that's because it makes us who we are. It's holistic into who we are. I don't think you can go through life and not have those conversations and avoid those. I still have them with people I work with all the time. I'm careful, to not offend, but I think that's an important part of interaction with each other.
Yeah. So if you were going to, from all these years that you've been, and I know that you've got in the career world, in the business world, as well as personal and church stuff and all that. But if you were going to be meeting with somebody and you're going to be talking to them about some brand new person, right out of high school, right out of college, just off of their their church service mission, whatever it is, right?
Sure.
Um, what advice would you give somebody who's just starting out in their career?
Hmm. Um, well, I think one of the first things I would say to them, I just barely had this conversation with a new, very young leader in the business, and I was watching her. She's been here a short, and on my current gig, she's been here a short time, and I really got worried about her uh, reasoning for why she was doing things, and I kept watching her do things that would impress the owners of the business and the people, maybe her peers and people above her, so to speak, in the hierarchy of the business. And so I set time on her calendar recently, and I didn't put anything other than Joel and so meeting time. Um, and we got on the call, and I said, if you don't mind, I really want to share some things with you that I've learned over my career, and in hopes of maybe helping you uh, avoid some pitfalls that I avoided in my life. And I started with this. I started with win your people, not your bosses. I said, if you will focus on winning your people, do the things that they will follow you anywhere. They will follow you through thick and thin, through hard days and easy days. I said, but if you spend your time winning your bosses, you can't simultaneously win your people because they can see how disingenuous you're behaving toward them when the bosses are there. And I said, and here's the thing, if that doesn't work in this company, it'll work in a different one. Don't be so concerned about making sure this is a 10 or a 20-year opportunity for you. If you win your people, you're always going to have work. You're always going to have a place to go and work. And so that's what I would probably say. The one thing I love so many things about this generation of young people is that they're actually already somewhat altruistic. And
Right.
because they're going to be such a better generation of leaders because they already in and of themselves think how important it is to have um, a well-rounded life. And I love it about them. I love that their brains think that way. I love that their brains think, of course I'm going to take a week off every couple months and I'm going to go hike some mountain or do something. And so I think that would be the thing I would tell a new person is to, if they're a leader, to win their people. And then I would also say to them, if you're not finding joy in what you're doing, change something. Like just, it'll be okay. Remain out of as much debt as humanly possible so you have the opportunity to change your circumstances if you're not happy in them. And because debt just puts chains on us and we end up having to do things we don't want to do. We have to work places we don't want to work. And if you don't have a lot of that around your neck, your feet, your arms, then you have more options to say, I just don't like it here. I just don't like this line of business. I don't like what the outcome of what we're doing is. And so that's all when I talk to young people, I always tell them not to get in debt. I tell them, don't look left or right. Don't worry about if your couch is nicer than somebody else's couch. They probably had to buy that on credit and they're going to pay for it for 10 years and it's just a stupid couch. Um,
And
so
then it's
yeah,
worn out and they got to buy another one.
exactly. Like, yeah, I remember when we were young, we would go to all of our friends' houses. Mindy and I, the very first time we got married in 92, and the first time we bought something that wasn't at a yard sale was in the year 2000. We bought a bed. We moved to Kansas City and we bought our first bed. Up until then, Mindy was the queen of finding really good things in Alpine, Utah, where the rich live. We would go buy their hand-me-downs because they were really nice,
Yeah.
nice things. And so I just think debt changes the way you have to live your life dramatically.
Yeah. I like when you said that they need to win your people.
Yeah.
What came to mind is General Colin Powell. I'm going to paraphrase. He basically said that you want to, as you jump off a cliff, you want your guys just to go with you just out of curiosity.
Yeah.
You want to be that kind of leader that they're like, I'm with you, man. Let's
Because
go.
you're jumping. Yeah. Yeah, I do. I love that. I've worked for some amazing people like that in my career.
Yeah. There's some really, really cool people out there. And we both have known a lot of the same people when it
Yeah.
comes to the really, really cool people that are able to be around and stuff like that. So, well, Joel, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you and you coming on this morning
Yeah.
and spending
It's
a
been
little
fun.
bit of time. It's been really good for me. I loved learning about the inverse paranoid side of things.
Yeah.
That totally makes sense. That fits you very,
You
very well.
actually, and you live that too, actually. Look at your accident. Look at the hills you've had to climb in your lifetime. I'll never forget, like just months after you got hurt, you were in a racing chair. I couldn't even wrap my head around it. Like you were not spending time saying, woe is me. You're doing marathons in a chair. Like I remember thinking, man, I got to pull myself together. This guy has had this life altering experience and he's racing in a racing chair. And I would still be sitting in the corner saying, oh, my legs hurt. And I just remember being so inspired by that, just so incredibly inspired.
No, I remember when you told me one time you were skiing up at Sundance and you hurt your shoulder,
Yeah, I tore my shoulder apart.
and and you were telling me that Mindy kept saying, "Well, Mark doesn't do that." Mark doesn't.
It's
I'm like,
true. It's
I'm like,
true.
don't use me that way. I'm not a 4-letter word.
I am next level baby. And so she did constantly refer to you. And that was annoying at that time.
Oh, I'm sure it was. And I'll have people say, "Oh, I can't tell you how much it hurts." Well, yeah, you can, because we all experience that.
Yeah.
We all have it. So
Yeah, you're no question as we sit here, your legs are tingling. You got some pins and needles, and that's just the way you choose
it's
to live
every
your
day.
life without complaint.
Yeah, it's an everyday thing. And I'll have Victoria ask me often. She goes, "Are you hurting?" I go, "No more than normal." It's-
Yeah, that's
if I
impressive.
heard something new, it's like, "Ooh, that one's not good.
There's new pain.
That one's new." Is it because I'm getting old, or is it?
Yes, is the answer. All of it's
Oh yeah,
yes.
that one is definitely the case. Yeah, I was flying back from Nebraska a couple weeks back, and oddly enough, I mean, I go to grab my backpack off of my suitcase, because I've got the rolling suitcase, right? And I go
Yeah.
pull it. And how many times have I done that?
Yeah, you tweaked
I
your
don't know.
back, I'm assuming.
And I grabbed that and I lifted that up and my shoulder went pop. I'm like,
Oh,
"Eh, no, 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 not now." So
yeah.
now it's like, okay, slowly we'll get back together.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That is the worst feeling when you're traveling. You're like, this is really bad timing.
Yeah, I think it was the next day and I was at home and Victoria's watching me eat. And I just didn't want to move that arm, right? Because it was like, it's just gonna the shoulder. And then at one point I moved the arm and she goes, "Wait, was that your shoulder that made that noise?" I'm like, "Yes, it was." So Monday I get to go and start doing some physical therapy.
PT in
And
it. Yeah, I've
yeah,
done that in my life.
yeah, it's old.
Yeah, it is. That's all right.
Yeah. So,
Thanks so
well,
much for the
thank you
opportunity. I
so
loved it.
much. I so appreciate you coming on and spending some time. As always, I love spending time with you, my friend.
Feelings mutual. Always has been.
All right. Thank you
Thanks,
very
Mark.
much.
You bet.
Okay.
Have a great day.